I am a professional cuddler and also a man.
So what are boundaries for you as a professional cuddler?
There are simple ones, right? Like, I'm ticklish in not a fun way. I do not like being tickled.
Wait, what? What is, how
So if I get tickled, I react really badly to it. I really don't like it. And like, I have like the impulse to like make it stop as fast as possible, right? So
safe word. Sure. So are your clients both men and women, or do they sway in one way versus another?
they are definitely both men and women, but mostly men.
So what happens in situations where you're cuddling a client and you get aroused? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Introspect Club, a club where you can learn a lot about yourself through conversations with other people. My name is Jeff Damisse, and I'll be your host. Now, we're going to continue on the discussion that we've had with previous guests regarding professional cuddlers. It's been a fascinating series of conversations, and we've definitely learned a lot. But one angle that we haven't really learned from is a professional male cuddler, right? I think that's a very unique position when you think about a man's ability to be affectionate, a man's ability to be soothing and comforting to other people. A lot of people don't really see a man in that position. I think it's a great opportunity to explore that. And we've learned a lot from, I guess, the women who are in this space. And I've always been fascinated to see what that perspective would be like from a man. So without further ado, I want to introduce someone that is a very special guest of the show. And I hope everyone has a large takeaway from this conversation, and I'm looking forward to it. So without further ado, I want to introduce my very next guest on the Introspect Club. This is a professional career coach who is also a professional cuddler. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Corwin Duncan. How you doing?
Doing great, man. Thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, man. Thanks for coming. I'm glad you were able to make it. Right on. Is that a bicycle on the back? You ride bikes?
That's a bicycle. I live in Brooklyn, where it's almost mandatory to have a bicycle.
Is that right? Are you the guys that's always in my way when I'm like driving?
Yes, I am 100% that guy.
I don't know who has the right of way. Do the bikes have the right of way, or is that
bikes always have right of way?
Is that a biased opinion, or is that like legitimate?
Completely unbiased. There's no way, being a cyclist, I would have a biased opinion on that whatsoever.
Just don't ruin my paint job, okay? Here's the deal. I want you to introduce yourself to the audience so they can get familiar with you. All right?
Absolutely. So what do you want me to say? Just talk about how I'm a professional cuddler?
Well, just who you are, what you're bringing to the table, what your offering is to like your clients and the people you deal with, so that way they can get familiar with who you are and how it works.
Gotcha. So yeah, as you mentioned, my name is Corwin Duncan. I am a professional cuddler and also a man. And that brings kind of a different energy into the work than it does for a lot of women. Right. And it's been a really valuable practice for me, space for me to be in that I've learned a lot about myself and boundaries, what boundaries can look like, how to hold them sort of in a way that feels good for everybody.
Yeah.
Because we can hold boundaries very strongly and sort of aggressively, but there may be times we want to hold a boundary more gently.
So in your mind, what is a professional cuddler from your perspective?
A professional cuddler is somebody who gives you space to be cared for, accepted, seen, and held.
Right.
Right. And I actually think it's a very important part of professional cuddling that it does not have to involve touch. That's not necessary. That's just an option if you want it, right? But a lot of times people simply need to be seen and understood most of all.
Okay. So, like, how did you even get in the right headspace to be in this profession where you cuddle people professionally? Like, how do you, I would imagine it's not something you grew up as a child saying, I'm going to be a professional cuddler. It had to have stemmed from something, right?
Yeah. So, there were a couple things that led to this, and a little bit of background on me. I spent a few years working for a mental health provider as like a job coach, employment counselor.
Okay.
And that's something I've continued to do on my own. But doing that in a mental health oriented environment, I got a lot of insight and understanding on mental health and how to provide a positive and comforting and reassuring experience for people while accepting them completely.
Okay.
Right? Very important part of it. And so when I saw a video about somebody who was a professional cuddler, actually a man living in New York City, I got excited about that. And at the time, to be completely honest, big part of that was, hey, this looks like a way I can make some money.
Okay. So
right?
It was initially the draw was the financials for you. That was
I would say it was an intersection of, this looks like something I could do well. This looks like something that people need.
Yep.
And this looks like something I can make money at. So that was absolutely a piece of it.
Got it. Okay. So as a man, right, the first thing that comes to my mind, right, I was already fascinated by the fact that people get paid to cuddle other people, or people hire people to cuddle with them, right? To create that physical connection or that physical environment that they probably wouldn't get on a normal basis. I get that, right? Mm-hmm. But where it probably makes more sense to me is, not that it makes more sense, but where I feel like it would be more accepting is if a woman would be embracing of a man or another woman, because women are very accepting of women being soothing and comforting, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So,
there's
go ahead.
There's this acceptance of women touching each other, cuddling each other, hugging each other, that we don't see with men, either men touching, hugging, cuddling with women or with other men.
Sure. So are your clients both men and women, or do they sway in one way versus another?
They are definitely both men and women, but mostly men.
So most of your clients are men?
Absolutely. And I think that there's a couple reasons why most professional cuddling clients are men.
Okay.
And I think kind of the number one reason is, in our culture, touch is so inaccessible for men.
Got it.
Right? Women are just seen as more, as safer, as more okay to cuddle with, as more okay to receive touch. I mean, how often do you imagine it happens that, like, if one man wanted to cuddle with another man, he might get the response of, whoa, that's gay.
Okay.
Not in a, like, we love gay people and that's totally cool, but as in that's a problem and we don't want that.
Right. But let me ask you a question. Are most of your male clients like heterosexual men, or do they sway in the other direction or within a spectrum?
No, they're wildly gay.
Okay.
That is why they want to cuddle with me. Right?
Okay. So would you say that you haven't had a heterosexual man as a cuddling client?
Probably not.
Okay.
And I don't ask them about their sexuality because that's completely irrelevant to what we're doing.
Sure.
Right? But a lot of them have told me, it's come up in one way or another that they're gay.
Got it.
And And that makes sense. That's pretty normal for me, right? So I have some friends who are very comfortable. They're men who are very comfortable cuddling with other men.
Okay.
And typically, those are the kind of men who have friendships with other people who also want to cuddle, right?
Sure.
So a lot of the people who are coming to me maybe don't have a lot of touch-based friendships in their lives.
Got it. Okay.
And so it's like there's this scarcity of touch and of affection, which frankly is something that I think is a huge problem for men in our culture. And so as a feminist, I'm really worried about the problems that the patriarchy causes for men and the things that it limits us from having.
Okay.
And the some of the scarcity around that and some of the judgments we end up having because of that.
Okay.
So for example, the patriarchal view of men are better and they're like women are a different tier or should be in a different role.
Right.
That's the basis of a lot of homophobia, right?
Sure.
Why should we avoid being effeminate? Because there's something wrong with that. But if we embrace the fact that there's nothing wrong with being feminine or effeminate, then it opens up a new level of acceptance for men who want to express themselves or act a little bit differently than how we as a society view masculinity or what men should be, right? In a very kind of a narrow way.
Of course, I agree with you. I think like patriarchal mindsets put a lot of people in different boxes, right? Because the idea is to conform to something that is normalized, something that's easier to understand, something that is seemed to be more natural given whatever tools we're given as humans. We said, okay, because you have this type of characteristic, you are fit in this box, and this characteristic, you're fit in that box. So I completely understand how and why that came to be. But my question to you is like, do you consider yourself heterosexual man, gay, bi? Like, is that at all within the conversation or?
I mean, it's in a sense, it's not in the conversation around professional cuddling because, once again, cuddling being something that's non-sexual, someone's sexual orientation kind of doesn't matter.
Sure.
But as it just came up, it does because mostly we want to cuddle with people we're attracted to, right?
Right.
There is like we want physical closeness and intimacy with people we're attracted to.
Sure.
Generally speaking. And so in my case, I wouldn't call myself straight, right?
Okay. That's fair.
But I'm more so, like, I'm not gay. Like, I'm not full on gay. I'm not hooking up with dudes, generally speaking. I usually date women. But when someone calls me straight, like, for example, I've had attractions and connections with people who are non-binary.
Got it.
If I'm completely straight, I'm only attracted to women, right?
Right.
So if I'm attracted to somebody who's non-binary, fundamentally, I'm not straight.
And that makes sense. And the reason why I asked the question is not necessarily to like, make it about that. I wanted to see the correlation between people's selection of their clients and selection of whoever's servicing them. Right? You made a point of people want to cuddle partially with who they're attracted to some degree, right? Mm-hmm. Because as much as it is a therapeutic experience, right? Part of it is this fundamental idea of wanting connection to something that you want to attract, right? So I said this before to somebody else. I said like, whenever I've gotten massages at like massage parlors, if I'm on vacation or just locally, if I just want like an actual, athletic massage or anything like that, I always choose a woman, right? Not to say that a man wouldn't do it better, right? It's just one of those things it's part of the experience. Like, yeah, I'm getting this massage, but another part of it is there's this pretty woman who's, exploring my body, whatever. Right. Mm-hmm. But at the end of the day, it's like, I'm not necessarily paying that person to create a sexual experience. It's more so like, that's just something that connects with the brain where physical touch is something that you respond to appropriately when you are accepting of the sex that is treating you in that way, right? Versus somebody that might find discomfort because even though it's a professional service, sometimes it's hard for them to disconnect that it's still a physical, intimate space that you're entering into. You see what I mean?
Yeah. So,
you're smiling
since
here.
we brought up sexuality and massages, I'm curious if you went to get a massage, you're on vacation, you want to get a massage.
Yeah.
And they were like, absolutely. And you said, great. Can I work with a woman? And they said, actually, none of our women on staff are here today. But here's this gentleman who can give you a massage. And you felt sore and tired. And you were like, yes, let's do it. I just need a massage. And during that massage, you felt yourself getting a sense of like attraction or turn on from that. How would that feel to you? How challenging would that be to you and your identity?
I don't know because I've never been in that situation, right? Mm-hmm. So like, I've never been in a massage, like, I don't know what to call it, environment where there were more men than there were women. So I don't even know how to even make that up, nor would I ever even, I just gotta be honest with you. I wouldn't even put myself in that position because that's just not what I want.
What
right?
you want.
That's not what I want, right? So I can't even speak on that. So my question to you is like, because you're probably more accepting of it from a wider spectrum, I would imagine that the clients that you have might get aroused, right?
So this is a pretty common thing for people in cuddle sessions who have penises, right? So those of us who have penises know sometimes they get hard. And sometimes that's because we're turned on. Yeah. And sometimes it's because we're relaxed. And sometimes it's because we woke up in the morning. And sometimes it's because we were called to class when we were called in the front of class when we were 14 and got embarrassed. And then, oh no, the worst time possible to get a boner. And that's when you get a boner.
Is that a thing? So, like when you called on class? It's
not like, it's more of a like, oh, okay, I'm getting called up. I hope I don't get a boner, right? Oh shit, that's happening.
Yeah. Okay.
So the only thing I'm saying is there are different reasons why penises get hard, right? Why we get erections. And that does happen pretty often in cuddling sessions. And sometimes probably because people get aroused or turned on to some extent.
Yeah.
Right? Especially people who have maybe not been held or hugged for months. To be like held close can be a really intense experience.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's just because it's relaxing and it feels safe.
Sure.
Right? And that can induce this reaction. And one of the interesting pieces of that is I think that we, as men or people with penises, are often taught to feel ashamed of getting boners when it's not an appropriate time.
Well, it depends on what you consider not appropriate time. Like, what's considered not appropriate time? That's
true. What I meant when I said that, and I should have been more specific, was if we're not in a sexual context,
okay,
then I think we've had an experience of being taught to feel shame around having a boner. And I think that's kind of silly, right? It's like,
well, I think it would suck if you're in a business meeting and you got a tight suit on and you're trying to make a presentation and then you got a whole boner. I can see why that's a problem. I can see that. Like, I can't focus on this presentation because you got a raging boner. Like, damn, I can see that. But see, here's the deal, right? Right now, you're more accepting of the spectrum of sexuality. But imagine if you were a completely heterosexual man, right? Like, where you could say, yes, I'm straight. I only date women. I only want to have relations with women. Would you say that you would be accepting of a role where you are cuddling other men? Would you say
100%? I don't think that would make the slightest bit of difference.
Are there fully heterosexual men in the cuddling space that have male clients?
I don't ask them if they're straight.
Okay.
So I don't know. I don't know of any cuddlers who advertise, I am a straight dude and I also cuddle with dudes. Like,
fair. It's just a fundamental question just to get an understanding of the draw for client to servicer to see if there's a correlation and acceptance on one end versus another. You know what I mean?
So the company that I work through primarily, so I was originally trained and certified through, and I'm listed on the website of Cuddlist.
Yeah.
So Cuddlist is a company. It's CUDDLIST.com.
Yeah.
A requirement for being a cuddlist and working through that website is that you need to be open to cuddling with all genders.
Correct.
Right? There, you can't say, I only cuddle women. I only cuddle men.
Yeah.
That's not... that's not, if you do that, then you're just not fit to be a cuddlist.
And that makes sense, right? Because it's a professional service that shouldn't be biased in any way, right? Like if you wanted to be a massage therapist, you don't want to say I only, you know what I mean? Like I get that. But at the same time, given that you have to be that open, I would imagine a lot of men who are heterosexual men, this is just my opinion, heterosexual men, to protect their masculinity, they might avoid being in that particular environment. Like, I'll be honest with you, like even if I wanted to be a professional cuddler and I think I can do it right, I'm only thinking doing it with women. I mean, that's just what it is. So I would not qualify to be in that particular.
Right. And I love that you said that, because you bring up such a good point.
Yeah.
You said to protect their masculinity.
Ure. And
that's such a good point, because your masculinity is not under threat because you're cuddling with other men. If anything,
you can say that verbally. You can say that verbally. I'm just saying social. I'm not disagreeing with you.
Right.
I'm saying
right.
Social,
and you're absolutely right.
Socially,
there is a different view of it. But the other question is, who defines your masculinity?
Well, it's not a matter of who defines your masculinity. It's a matter of what defines your masculinity. And what
it is a matter of who.
No.
Because if you define your own masculinity, then it doesn't matter how you're viewed.
No, here's why I don't say it like that, right? Again, and I'm not the definition of how things are defined. This is just an opinion, right? Mm-hmm. I look at masculinity as not who says I'm masculine. It's about what says I'm masculine, right? And what I mean by what, it's a matter of what responsibilities that I take on, right? As that definition comes to play, right? So the most stereotypical things you would think about masculinity is someone who sacrifices, right? Who has a certain level of strength in so many different ways, right? Very stereotypical strength, whether it's physical strength, mental strength, all that stuff, right? And someone who's also less, almost immovable, right? If I'm enunciating it properly, where you're not shaken by a lot of things, right? Mm-hmm. And what comes with that is someone who might often lack sensitivity. You see what I'm saying? I'm not saying that needs to be the case. I'm not saying that's the default, right? But there's a large likelihood that that's what comes with the territory when you're taking on that particular role. So because of what it is you're taking on as the quote unquote masculine person, what usually comes with that, not for everybody, but what usually comes for that is this coldness, this inability to connect or be soft and sensitive, right? Whereas someone in your role, you have to be soft, sensitive, and caring and understanding, which is a great trait, something that I'm trying to be better at. But at the same time, it doesn't come natural to a lot of men because of all the other burdens that they take on because of what it takes to be masculine. It's not because somebody's telling them. It's just that's the role that is the default for them growing up.
Yeah, and I hear what you're saying. And there's a couple things that you said there that like really strike me. And one of them, for example, is the fact that you're suggesting being strong and being sensitive are things like you can do one or the other. or
No.
being one makes it difficult to be the other.
Yes, that's the part. That's the part that I'm saying. I'm saying for a lot of men, being strong makes it difficult for them to be sensitive, because oftentimes the sensitivity will catch them off guard and diminish their strength in situations where they do need to be strong.
It certainly, I would agree that there is, there's more nuance to being sensitive and strong at the same time.
Sure.
But I would say a man who lacks sensitivity lacks masculinity just as much as a man who lacks strength.
And I agree. I agree with you 1,000%. It's just not, again, it's one of those things that's easier said than what is the reality of how people operate. This is just an opinion. It's just an opinion.
But another piece of that is, as you suggested, the pressure we put on young men and boys to be strong at the expense of being sensitive from a young age, right? We are expecting men to sacrifice. We're expecting men to give up certain things, to give up feelings of vulnerability or being cared for. Yeah. Right? It's very hard, I think, for a lot of men to allow themselves to be cared for. Yeah. Yeah. But being vulnerable, being sensitive, receiving care are things that give us so much more strength than they take away. Yeah. That it's such a disservice to men and to masculinity to equate sensitivity with weakness in any way, right? Okay. And I hear you on the way you're saying these things. Yeah, yeah. And I'm challenging you not because I think that you're wrong, but because I think that the basis from what you're talking about is flawed. Sure. Right? So you're saying, I see this in the world, I see it too, and it breaks my heart.
Sure. And I'm not saying these things as these are the absolutes, this is what things need to be. I'm just giving you from the experience that I've had and from the lens that I carry, these are the things that I witness, right? Whether they're true, false, or people have different experiences, that's either here nor there, right? But if we're just talking between you and me, then that's what it is. So my question to you is like, give me an example of an experience you had with, let's say, a client that was a very good representation of this very conflict. Do you have that?
You know, the example I want to give you is actually one of the very first experiences I had in kind of my training as a professional cuddler. It wasn't even with a client. So one of the first things I did was I went to a cuddle party, which is an event where there's like a 45-minute intro of some rules and some basics basics of consent, things like that. Yeah. Really, really valuable space. And then there's this place where you can cuddle with other people. Yeah. Sometimes people sometimes you might cuddle with strangers, whatever, right? I think it's an amazing thing. They're really cool. And you can go there and say, I'm only going to cuddle with women. Any dude asks me to cuddle, I'm just going to say no. And that's fine, right? Okay. That's totally fine. You could just say, I'm not going to cuddle with anyone. Anyhow, during the intro, there's an exercise where you turn to the person next to you and you say, can I hold your hand? Yeah. Can I something? And they say, no. Yeah. And then they say, can I hold your hand? Or can I kiss you? They ask for something. And you say, no. Uh-huh. And let me tell you, the first time I did that, it was so incredibly hard for me to say no.
What do you mean?
I mean, this person, it happened to be a woman sitting next to me, looked at me and said, can I kiss you? And I said, no. Okay. And it was so difficult for me because I had never been given practice in saying no. And I was scared. I'd been taught to sacrifice. I'd been taught to make other people happy. I'd been taught to protect other people's comfort and not to really be honest in that way of saying, no, I don't want this.
And you think that's a reflection of you being a man or a reflection of what?
I do think it's actually in part, I think there's this dichotomy, right, where women need to learn how to say no very quickly in their lives because their boundaries are so frequently pushed on and ignored.
Got it.
But that's so often ignored when they say no that they learn they can say no, but it's not allowed, like it's not respected.
Okay.
Men, on the other hand, I think rarely have to actually say no in that same kind of way, and so we don't end up with practice doing that. And it's this thing that is difficult in kind of a different way. So a lot of conversations around consent talk about sort of this assumption that men need to get consent from women.
Okay.
And there's this other side where we don't as often include men in the conversation as people who need to have their consent respected or asked for before it's assumed.
You know what? That's so true, because like I'll give you a scenario, right? Like this is kind of like left field, but very similar, right? Mm-hmm. So oftentimes like certain women will want to set me up with their friend, right? And it's a weird, I rarely accept those type of propositions. Here's why, right? Oftentimes they want to introduce me to their friend that I've never met. I haven't seen a picture of them. I haven't spoken to them, this, that, and the third. So now they put me in a position where they start describing their friend. Oh, she's wonderful. She's this, she's that, right? And then they show me a picture of her, right? See, isn't she gorgeous? Isn't she great, right? And in my mind, I'm like, this is not my person, right? Like, and I fight the urge of like saying, yeah, I reject this. I'm saying no to this person, because a part of me is like, I'm going to hurt her and her friend's feelings, because I don't know if her friend put her up to this. And I don't know how sensitive she is about how her friend is received to other people. Right. So I'm just kind of like, I mean, like sometimes I'm like, I mean, we could all hang out. You know what I mean? You know, like,
absolutely.
You know, I mean, I've learned, I mean, as of late, I'm more like, listen, that's not what I'm into. Right. And then they'll say, why? What's the problem? Ba, 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 right. Or they'll say like, are you just like, well, I've never heard anyone say like, are you just not into women? I've never heard anyone say that, but that's a concern. Like they might, because most men will be less rejective of women, right? I'm just highly selective, and I'm hesitant when I say no, but I do say no, so I get it. You know what I mean? So yeah,
I mean, even that, this assumption that most men want a given thing. Most men don't want to reject women. I think that's even a silly thing that we've come to believe without a good reason, right? A lot of men I've talked to have been like, not wanting too much attention, don't want a lot of sex, don't want a lot of like dates, whatever. But there is this assumption that they do. And so it's like we have trouble acknowledging that can happen. Like if I told you, hey, I heard a story last week where this woman sexually assaulted a man. What's your first thought? Right?
My first thought, believe it or not, which might be super biased, I'm thinking of a man who is a little bit adolescent. Right? That to me, that's the only way I can see a woman taking advantage of him. Right? Mm-hmm. And that's an unfair thought, because that just means the only way a woman can take advantage of a man is if he's not matured to manhood yet. Right. See what I mean? So that's how my thought process goes. And it's a weird thing, because I often, combat the idea that like physical and even sexual abuse only comes from men, right? And I'm always having like the debate, like, women can be, aggressors and abusers as well. But then just to your question, I had a conflicting thought when it came to my response, right?
Right. And so to me, that's actually what that's a great illustration of, is that we do have these biases. We do have these assumptions that we are taught, and we have to unlearn them.
Right.
Right. So you and I are both in this position of saying, what's actually happening in my head?
Right.
Is that what I want to have happen? Is
Right.
that what I really believe when I stop and think about it?
Yeah.
Or is it just a reflex? Is it just what I've been taught?
Yeah.
You know?
No, I mean, that's fair.
So-
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, like, doing the work of professional cuddling, this is a really important part of it is when you come in for a session with me. I'm just going to say you. Imagine you, Jeff, walking into a session with me, right? When you come in for a session with me, the most important thing I can offer you is a space where you can be comfortable.
Sure.
And because you're a human, you're a sensitive guy, not overly sensitive, but you're aware of the people around you, right? You don't want to hurt anybody's feelings.
Okay.
The best way and the only way I can help you to be comfortable is to make sure that I am totally comfortable. So I'm not doing anything that makes me uncomfortable. I'm not dishonest when I say, yes, this is fine. I'm not lying to you by saying, yeah, let's lie down and cuddle. I have to make sure that if there's something I don't want, I'm completely honest and say, no, I don't want to do that. We have to do something different. So the essence of the work of professional cuddling is really maintaining boundaries in a very, very like gentle, nuanced, precise, and subtle way.
Okay.
That helps everybody be comfortable.
So what are boundaries for you as a professional cuddler?
There are simple ones, right? Like I'm ticklish in not a fun way. I do not like being tickled.
Wait, what? What is, how
so if I get tickled, I react really badly to it. I really don't like it. And like I have like the impulse to like make it stop as fast as possible, right? So
safe word.
Well, that or like, but it even goes below that. Like I'll want to get physical, like push someone off or hit someone to stop.
Oh, wow.
But I don't feel like I can do that. So instead I get frozen and it becomes a really helpless, uncomfortable thing for me.
Okay.
Right. And I think this was because people would like hold me down and tickle me when I was a kid and I would want them to stop and they wouldn't stop.
Yeah.
And so it became a moment where I was very helpless and powerless.
Got it.
And helplessness is really a big, huge part of trauma. What makes something really unpleasant for us in the future
Got it.
is that feeling of helplessness.
Got it.
So that's a simple thing, right? Somebody wants to tickle me, and I'll tell this to new clients. Hey, I don't like being tickled. If your hand is on my side, I might ask you to move it. Not because there's something wrong with that in general, but at that moment, it felt like tickling to me.
Okay.
I don't want your hands between my waist and my mid-thigh, right? So kind of a slightly broader, like anywhere that boxers would cover, pretty much.
Got it.
Right?
Got it.
And different people have different physical boundaries. And the reason for that boundary for me is that's an area that feels sexual to have somebody's hands touching me there. And so that doesn't belong in a cuddle session. And I would not want to touch a client in that area or anywhere a two-piece bathing suit would cover if they're a client who has, breasts.
So what happens in situations where you're cuddling a client and you get aroused?
Nothing. What do you mean?
No, meaning does that make the experience more difficult for you? Is that because a boundary was crossed, or is that completely normal?
It's totally normal.
Really? And do your clients ever respond in any particular way when that happens?
So when I say it's totally normal, it doesn't happen to me frequently, but it's generally normal for bodies to do that.
Sure.
Right. So when that has happened to me, I don't remember having gotten comment on it or having the client have a reaction to it. But I made a video a while back, and I don't think I currently have it available to search, but it was, what do you do if someone gets an erection during a cuddle session? You can ignore it. You can say, hey, can we adjust, right? Can we do something a little different?
Okay.
If you don't want a boner poking you in the leg or the back or whatever, you just move. It's that simple.
That is wild to me.
Right?
It's wild to me in the sense because and I've said this before, when you're doing professional cuddling or when you're cuddling someone, even if the intent is supposedly very plutonic, but the mechanisms that make it romantic are often the same. You see what I'm saying? So you might
to clarify what you're saying, you're saying usually we associate physical closeness and cuddling with romance, and so those things can look and feel the same to some people.
It's not even what I'm saying.
Okay.
I'm saying if you want it to be romantic, the gestures aren't necessarily that different and at the entry point.
Gotcha.
You see what I'm saying? So your body responds to that romantically just as much as it does platonically. You see what I'm saying? So in other words, like if you want here's what I mean. If you want to be close to someone platonically, you can hug them, right? Mm-hmm. You can hug them, you can embrace them, right? You might caress them in whatever way you feel is appropriate between the two of you. Guess what? If you want to be close to someone romantically, you can hug them, you can caress them, right? Similar gestures. So your body, your cells, every organ in your body doesn't know, other than your mind, right? Mm-hmm. And even if your mind puts a boundary, your body might respond to things, especially if you have erogenous zones that aren't necessarily the typical.
Yes, totally fair.
You see what I mean?
I do.
Right.
I'm glad you clarified that because, I get you.
So when that happens, would that shift the mindset of the client? Like, has there ever been a client that wanted to take it further than just cuddling?
So there's this thing that happens in professional cuddling.
Okay.
That I don't know how well I'm going to describe it, but bear with me. And it comes from the fact that sex work is stigmatized and illegal in our country, in our culture.
Okay.
And so there's this idea of seeking out sex work as shameful. Even sometimes for men, wanting sex work or wanting sex can be shameful.
Yeah.
So sometimes men will come to professional cuddlers and they want care, intimacy, affection, but they also have a desire that maybe they aren't even aware of for sex or for sex work. And they're not admitting that. They're in denial about that. Right?
Okay.
And so it's this weird limbo of like, yeah, I want this, but I'm pretending I don't. And they're not just saying to the cuddler, no, like, yes, I'm good with a platonic service, and kind of deceiving the cuddler. They're really deceiving themselves.
Okay.
And sometimes there will be people who will come and actively deceive the cuddlers, right? But again, because they want a service that is not widely available and really should be. So I had a client who came, and in the screening process, because we pretty much all have a screening process that we go through.
Right, makes sense.
I was already not totally, this is a great client. Right?
You weren't sold.
I wasn't sold. I was a little hesitant, but I went ahead.
Okay.
And this is a great example of a boundary my own boundary that I crossed.
Okay.
Because I said, yes, I'm going to go ahead and see you. The reason was because I wanted the income from that session.
Sure.
And that's actually me crossing the boundary of saying, I don't want to work with this person, but I'm going to ignore my own boundary for the sake of making a little money.
And what were the clues that said you shouldn't work with this client?
The way that he responded when I asked him things.
Like?
I don't remember the exact questions I used at the time, but his responses did not say to me, I want to be here talking to you and making it clear that I am a good client for you. He wanted to get past that part and get to the next thing. He just wanted to get through it, get it done with.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, if you asked me, you were like, Corwin, you want to be on my podcast? Like, yeah, sure. And you were like, great, we're going to have a phone call. And I was like, all right. And then as soon as we got on the phone, I was like, yeah, whatever, man. Let's just get on the podcast. Let's just start recording.
Yeah. Okay.
that would feel weird to you, right? You'd be like, maybe I don't want to have you on my podcast.
Yeah. And I've had that.
Right. Yeah. And in this case, you're on the, like, you can just stop the call and you can just hit end. You can cut it off. You can not release the podcast, whatever. So it's more okay to be like, we'll see what happens. In that case, this is a person I'm cuddling with. Their whole body is next to me, right? And so what happened was during the session, there was the way, so there's like, sometimes when you're cuddling, you're still, sometimes you move a little bit, right? Okay. You adjust, there's this, there's that. What he was doing was more like, just a little bit like dry humping.
Oh.
And then it moved more towards that. And I felt a little stuck, a little frozen, right? And I didn't know how to respond. And my sort of, the rule is, if it feels sexual, it doesn't belong in a cuddle session.
And is that subjective?
100% subjective.
Right. Okay.
And that's the thing about it, is there's no objective way to say, is this sexual? It's, does this feel sexual
to you? And
this was my problem. In that session, I went with, does it feel sexual to him? And I asked him, I said, does this feel sexual to you?
Oh, you did?
And he did not say to me, no, it doesn't. He said to me, no.
He said, nope. That is those are the words of a guilty man.
Exactly. But because he said no, I didn't give myself a further option to say, doesn't feel good to me. We need to change something.
And so what happened?
So that stopped. We kept cuddling. Then it kind of slowly started back up again a little bit later.
Yeah.
And then the end of the session timer went off. In that case, I was kind of saved by the bell. Right. But the thing what I think happened with that client was, he wanted sex. He wanted affection. I think that he was not comfortable being attracted to a man. I think he was in denial about that part of it.
Really?
And, oh yeah, he did not show up as a person who looked comfortably gay.
What does comfortably gay look like? Because that's subjective.
That is subjective. That's very subjective. And yet, if you walk down the streets in New York, sometimes you're like, oh, that's a person who wants everyone to know that they're queer or that he's gay, right? He showed up more so in a way that I associate with heterosexual men who don't want to look gay.
I don't even know where to begin with, like, classifying what categories a particular look looks like. You know what I mean? But I'll go by your word. But with that said, did you have a conversation with the person to, like, clarify what their intent was after the fact to see?
No.
Well, okay. So you're saying that because there's not enough access for sex work, there's a lot of people who are undercover seeking, like, affection or I guess sex from other outlets that aren't meant for that. Is that what you're saying?
That's one piece of it. And the other thing is, because there's stigma around sex work.
Okay.
It's like, if you're talking to somebody who's like, yeah, last night, I had a call girl over and it was a lovely time and, a great experience. What are you thinking then? Are you thinking, well done, sir, for finding a way to get your needs met? Or are you thinking, why do you need to see a sex worker? Why can't you get a date? Right? There's this shame around it.
I think that shame exists. This is just my perception. That shame might also exist in just being, like, getting a professional cuddler.
Absolutely.
Right. So where do you draw the line between the person just finding shame and finding sex work versus also finding shame or just only finding shame with getting a professional cuddler? Because I don't think a lot of people are boasting about it at work. Oh, I hired a professional cuddler. I'm imagining that's just not a regular conversation because I've never had this conversation with anybody, and there is a large volume of professional cuddlers in the United States, right?
Compared to most things, no. There's like a tiny, tiny number.
Okay,
of
so you guys are
cuddlers.
you guys are pretty niche, right?
Yes.
So even the clients that you do get, I'm going out on a limb to say they're not ranting and raving about their professional cuddling session at work.
Mostly, you're absolutely right.
Right.
And what I would say is there is a level of shame associated with seeking sex work, and there's also a level of shame for a lot of people. And if not shame, then, and I would say there's two different things. Shame and fear of judgment are not the same thing, right? So if I do something that I'm like, this is a good thing I'm doing, but I'm worried that other people are going to judge me.
Yeah.
That's one thing. But if I do another thing where I do it and it feels awful to me, right? I have trouble accepting myself. That's shame.
Fair enough. That makes sense. Do you feel like people were more or less comfortable with the idea of professional cuddling during the COVID shutdowns and so on and so forth?
To be honest, I don't know, because I wasn't seeing people as a professional cuddler during lockdown. And until the vaccine became available, I wasn't seeing any clients after COVID started.
So how about now, like post-vaccine, do you feel like there's a rise in the amount of people that are seeking this type of service, or their level of comfort with it is changing? What are you seeing?
I don't think that there is more people seeking it necessarily than there were prior to COVID.
Okay.
Necessarily. I don't get a ton of clients to begin with. Is that
because you're not actively putting yourself out there, or because there's just not that many clients to go around?
There are fewer clients for men.
There it is.
I'm not super active in putting myself out there, right? I'm not marketing all the time.
Okay.
You talk to Sam, you talk to Keely, I think, and those are people who are pretty active in their business. Got it.
But do you feel like it's easier for a woman to get clients as a professional cuddler?
It's vastly easier for a woman to get clients, but I think it's a little bit easier for a woman to get good clients.
What's considered a good client?
What do you think for a professional? What do you think is a good client?
I don't know. Somebody keeps coming back and pays on time. I don't know.
Somebody who keeps coming back, pays on time, is respectful of the boundaries you set out, and wants what you're actually offering.
Got it. So as a male professional cuddler, you feel as though people don't take you seriously.
I don't think that was what I said at all.
What I mean by that is, if they're not respecting your boundaries.
Oh, no. People usually are respecting my boundaries when they show up for a session.
You just said a woman, it's easier for her to get good clients, and a good client is also indicative of someone who's respecting your boundaries.
Right. So the difference I was making there is for a woman, let's say for a man, it's hard to get people inquiring about your services.
Okay.
For a woman, it's easier to get people inquiring, but a higher percentage of those people are going to not be good clients. They're going to be seeking. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, you're saying, got it. You're saying they won't respect a woman's boundaries.
Right. So let's say a woman who's a professional cuddler gets 10 client requests and I get 1, right?
Okay.
Probably my client. Let's say I get
Sounds
2.
like a dating app swipe series.
There's some similarities there. There really are.
Anyway, go ahead.
No,
for those who don't know, the average woman gets 100% match ratio on an app. A man probably gets like 10%. But go ahead.
Yeah, no, I'm aware of that, and I think it's another whole conversation, right? But like that numbers game there. But like, let's say I get 2 client requests, one of them works out.
Okay.
That's not uncommon for me. Let's say Sam gets 10.
Yeah.
And 5 of those aren't actually good referrals. They're not people who really want cuddling, or
okay, she's got to filter through a bigger rigmarole of nonsense before she has
Exactly.
But you're saying
Beautifully said.
But you're saying as a man, you might get less inquiries, but the quality of your clients are better.
I'm going to have fewer good quality clients. I'm going to have fewer clients of any kind whatsoever.
You said you're going to have fewer good quality clients?
I'm going to have fewer of every client. So that's the thing is, if she gets a bunch of inquiries.
Okay, let's do this.
Yeah.
Let's do this. A woman gets 10 inquiries.
Yeah.
It might take her 10 minutes and it might take you 10 days. I don't know. But the point is 10 inquiries.
Yeah.
You're saying half of her inquiries won't be genuine people who are really seeking for what the service is made for? Half of them will.
It will take. So, I mean, the other piece of it is how do you market, right? And at this point, for example, Sam is pretty good at putting herself out there in such a way that the people she wants to work with are the people who are coming to her.
In either case, you made the statement that for a woman, the boundaries are crossed more.
Yes.
Right? So the point is, I imagine with a man, the boundaries are crossed less.
Yes.
Okay. So that's really what I was trying to get at. And it's very evident in the sense of like, okay, if they have a greater pool of people that they're selecting from, there's probably a greater pool of bad people as well, right?
That's actually not how I look at it. The way I see it is more often, like straight men are more often taught to seek power over the people they're around.
Okay.
Or be disrespectful of boundaries.
Okay.
And I think women and gay men who are used to having interactions where men are hitting on them are a lot more aware of boundaries and able to respect them.
Okay. So let's stay on the topic of boundaries real quick. Are you currently in a relationship?
Yeah, I am.
Okay. Is it with a man, woman, like non-binary?
With a woman.
With a woman. So you're in a relationship with a woman.
Yeah.
What is that dynamic like, knowing that you're a person who gets paid to cuddle with other people?
Well, it's great, but it's not a traditional monogamous relationship to begin with. So
what does that mean?
We have sex with other people too. We both cuddle with other people, date other people, have sex with other people, whatever.
Okay, so let's explore that for a second, right? Do you feel as though the experience as a professional cuddler would have been the same if you were in a traditionally monogamous relationship?
I'm going to turn that around a little bit.
Okay.
And because I've gotten this question before, right? And I've thought about this. And the way I would put it is, who I am as a person, I'm seeking a partner who understands that cuddling is a healthy, nurturing, caring, and important thing to provide for people.
Okay.
And if someone doesn't understand that about me or the work that I'm doing, they're not a good partner for me.
Sure.
Separately from whether they're comfortable with cuddling.
Okay.
Right? And so somebody who's going to be a partner for me, monogamous or non-monogamous, is somebody who's going to see what I'm doing as valuable and vital for the world, not just something that they might be uncomfortable with.
Yeah, I can see that. But the reason why I asked the question is I've spoken to a few professional cuddlers throughout this experience, and the general consensus is they've often explored or are currently in non-monogamous relationships, right? And there's a correlation in my mind, right?
Absolutely.
Whereas people who are very accepting of sharing their bodies with other people would probably be less dismissive of someone who does that regularly, even if it's professionally, right? In fact, you're probably crossing less of a boundary by being a professional cuddler versus, having sex with other people, right? But you're already accepting having sex with other people, so professionally cuddling someone is cupcakes. You know what I mean? Like, for lack of a better word.
Again, accurate, 100% accurate.
Right. So
cupcakes is how I'm going to describe professional cuddling from now on.
Yeah. Are you cupcaking? You cupcaking over there. But in all seriousness, I'm seeing that correlation. I think within the community of people who are into non-monogamous relationships, it's easier for them to not get jealous or get judgmental, because in a lot of ways they're sharing their bodies as well, in a very honest way with their partners, which is completely fair and appropriate, which is how it should be if you're going to do that. But there's a strong correlation. So I'm trying to imagine a straight man who is also in a fully monogamous relationship, right? Being in a space where they are going out in the world and entertaining, I don't want to say entertaining, but servicing people in such a way where there's a lot of intimacy, physical closeness, right? Conversations that are of like very private sometimes. I'm sure you have a lot of private conversations with people. I think this is just an opinion. People can judge me all they want. Anybody who's in a, especially hetero monogamous relationship might find difficulty in that. That's just an opinion.
I totally agree that a lot of people would find difficulty in that.
Yeah.
And what I would say it takes to thrive in that kind of relationship with someone who's a professional cuddler is security, right?
Yeah.
Is knowing yourself and being secure in yourself, knowing your partner, being secure in who they are, and security in the relationship dynamic, right? So knowing they're going out to cuddle with other people, but they still care about me, right? My relationship is safe.
Yeah.
I don't need to worry about that. I don't need to be scared about that just because this other thing is happening. I know people, I've seen people say that their male partner, a woman I know said her husband shouldn't let another woman ride on the back of his motorcycle.
Of course not. Of course not. Of course I'm gonna say that. Come on. Listen. This
is to me like a ridiculous level of control to expect over your partner. Like if your partner says, "Listen, you mean so much to me, and I love the special thing that we share where you ride on my motorcycle. I don't want to share that with anyone else." That's one thing, right? But if she says, "You're my property and you're not allowed to do this thing with other people," it's not a sexual thing, it's not a romantic thing, it's just a fun thing, then that's some, said not to swear, that's not great. I think that's BS, right? Now, there is a question of like, what like, and to me this comes back to what are your relationship agreements? What do you agree to not do with other people for the sake of your partner?
Right.
And I mean, let's say you're dating a preacher. Who has
okay.
Right? Let's say it's in a sect or a branch of Christianity where preachers can get married, have families, all this stuff.
Okay.
Right? But they're also having really personal conversations with people at times.
Okay.
They're also serving their congregation in a way that for other people might feel like crossing some boundaries, might feel like too intimate.
Sure, of course.
that's another example where you might say, whoa, how do you deal with this person who goes and has these personal conversations, provides spiritual guidance, whatever? But that's a fundamental part of who that person is, and it's something he's providing for the world. He's doing for the world. They're doing for the world because it's a good thing to do, and it's necessary for these people.
Yeah, I mean, again, like, I think as the world evolves, we've progressively gotten more accepting of a lot of things that might have been taboo in the past. But I think some of the things that are currently niche, like professional cuddling, it's not a widely accepted like service or practice. Mm-hmm. So there's gonna be pushback, right? I'm pretty sure there was a time where even massaging,
absolutely, that's exactly it.
Yeah,
massage used to be stigmatized.
Exactly. If you're massaging another man's wife and you're getting paid for it, like, get out of here. You know what I'm saying? Now it's like, get out of here. I'm getting a massage. You know what I mean? Like, you see, so I'm looking at it from the lens of like, this is just progressively something that might be more accepted over time. But right now you're not in a space where people could like be super comfortable with it, or they're not going to be in the space where heterosexual people are going to be doing it to others that they're not, physically attracted to. Right. It's just not accepted. So I get that. I think over time it might be a little different, but right now it's a tough sell. Right. That's just what it is.
And my bigger point, because I think you're totally right. And you're kind of looking at the reality of the world as it is right now.
Sure.
And I'm trying to talk about like a couple things. The world as I think it should be.
Okay.
Right? Where these things are more accepted, but also to share the fact that my life has gotten so much better, and I am so much happier that I have learned to let go of some of the judgments and some of the restrictions I placed on myself for doing things I wanted to, or for not doing things I didn't want to.
Yeah.
Back to earlier when I said that it was so hard for me to say no, that first time I practiced in a cuddle party.
Yeah.
Through professional cuddling, learning about boundaries, learning how important it is to maintain them exactly where they are and not lie to myself and say, no, it's okay to do a little bit more than I want to do.
Yeah.
I have stopped doing so much stuff that I don't want to do.
Yeah.
Imagine if someone just said, hey, Jeff, you don't have to do anything you don't want to do anymore.
Yeah.
Socially, sexually, whatever other parts of your life, right? Wouldn't that be amazing? And the thing is, it's not that, like, I'm not going to make that blanket of a statement, but there's so much I think that we do that we don't want to do. And so much of that we can stop. It's unnecessary. Well, we can just let go of that.
I think it's hard for me to connect with that statement only because I've already put myself in a place where I'm pretty hard-headed and stubborn. You know what I mean? So like I'm actively filtering out things that I don't want to do, right? Not everything. I mean, it's unrealistic to say that anything that I don't want to do, I'm just not going to do. I mean, if that was the case, like I probably wouldn't work out as much. You know what I mean? But I do work out some days, even when I don't. But there are certain things that just come with the territory of just, holding yourself responsible for things that, the act of being responsible for them, the things you do to be responsible, you might not want to do, but there's levels, right? So as a professional cuddler, right? How much do you charge these clients? How much do people pay to like be professionally cuddled?
My rate in Denver was a little bit different in New York. But so in Denver, it was $80 an hour plus a travel fee if I traveled.
Okay.
In New York, it's $120 an hour plus a travel fee.
Okay.
The question I have for you, and when you ask that, is that, does that feel different asking a professional cuddler than it would asking somebody else?
What do you mean?
Would you ask that question if somebody came onto your show who's an electrician?
Okay. Like would I ask an electrician how much they charge?
Yeah.
No, the reason why I wouldn't ask is because it's something that I can find the standards for, right? In fact, I'm glad you said that because my professional line of work is construction management. Okay. So I know that, right?
Right.
But even if it's a field that I'm not familiar with, right? Let's say it's a professional masseuse, right? I can go to a website and find out how much somebody charges because I've actively participated in stuff like that, right?
So, fun fact, you can actually go to a website and find out how much
I'm sure you can.
I charge. Cuddlist.com.
I'm
sure you can find my profile. Yeah.
I'm sure you can. I'm just saying it's not something that I've actively, you see what I'm saying?
Had experience with.
Had interest in to even know which websites to check, right?
Yeah.
So now that I have this initial intrigue of the field, right? I figured I'd ask someone who's in it because I have no idea what the standards are. A website could say something, and I haven't explored enough websites to know what the standard is or what you know what
for sure.
You know what I mean? So that's the reason why I do it. And somebody who's not in construction might be intrigued by, and that's happened before. It's like, oh, how much does it cost to build a building? You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't. We can explore.
And that's totally fair reason. It's a fair question.
Yeah.
The more the flip side of that is when people are like, oh, how much do you make? Right? Which is like, what is your income from this thing? And that's the weird question, right? Because when you tell people, I'm a construction manager, they're probably not like, yeah, what's your salary, dude? You know? and it's amazing how often professional cuddlers, we get that, right?
I think the reason why you might get that again is because it's not standardized to the mind of the people, right? When you think of someone who's like in management or who's a principal at a school, right? There's probably enough of them where it's like a structured value that you place on someone in that space. Whereas when they look at someone who is less structured or in a creative space and they say they do this professionally, they're going to ask that question, right? So if someone said that they are a professional Broadway singer, I'm pretty sure they are more likely to be in the realm of people who are asked how much you make doing that versus someone who's a dentist where they don't even know how much.
But in our culture, that's not a generally polite thing to ask. And
I agree with you 1,000%. There's a lot of things that aren't polite.
I think it should be. I think everybody should talk about their salaries. But it is. I'm just like pointing out, highlighting this, which is not what you asked, right? You asked a little bit different question, which But that there is this trend of people in a more niche profession of whatever kind getting this question, which we wouldn't ask somebody else.
Sure, if it's niche and it's something that you didn't even know existed, you're going to start asking a lot of questions, hence this whole podcast. Okay? You know what I mean? Like, I don't go up to a dentist and say, what's the biggest molar you ever had to deal with? You know what I mean? How big was the biggest cavity? Is that crazy? But if a dentist was the first dentist on earth, I'd be like, what is a dentist? You know what I mean? Like, I've never even heard of a dentist. You know what I mean? I think that's the problem where, like, because it's so niche that you're going to be, it's kind of like, okay, I'll give you something way left field. When I travel to other countries and they're not used to seeing people with my complexion, questions get asked. They ask to take pictures with me, right? But I don't even fault them because it's like, you're just not used to this, right? Your environment does not produce this regularly. So I get it. You know what I mean? This is the same scenario.
Yeah. That's a very fair response.
Yeah. You know? Yeah. And I think ultimately, like, my biggest takeaway in this entire conversation that we've had is that, you know, you are having an experience that a lot of people don't know about, don't get a chance to see, and don't really know the truth about. They make a lot of assumptions. And versus making assumptions and coming up with my own conclusions, I enjoy the fact that I was able to hear it from you in an honest and open way. And I think you were very eloquent in how you not conducted, but how you interacted in this interview. And I'm hoping a lot of people were able to, like, consume the value and understanding the other, you know, value that comes from a space like this. You know what I mean?
I appreciate that. Yeah, I do. I appreciate that. And I appreciate what you said there. I also hope that people can appreciate some of what I'm saying and some of the value that I've gotten from professional cuddling.
Yeah, certainly. And especially when you talk about boundaries, which is a very big thing. And as far as like being open and truly understanding and identifying what makes up masculinity, right? I think that's something that's always swaying in our environment in today's world, right? People are always questioning because there's a lot of nuances, right? And I think you've given us other perspectives that can, feed that narrative in a positive way. So thank you for that. What's the best way for people to reach you? And do you have like any programs or services coming up that you think people can take advantage of?
I don't have any specific programs. So professional cuddling in New York City and the local environments. Mm-hmm. You can find me at cuddlist.com/Corwin. That's CORWIN.
Okay.
For cuddling. And then, as I mentioned, I'm also offering career counseling, mostly interview skills coaching. And for that, don't go through Cuddlist. You can find me at duncancoaching.com. That's my last name, Corwin Duncan. So it's DUNCAN coaching.com.
Right on. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Jeff Damisse. You can find me at j.damisse for IG. Or you can find me on Twitter on J_DAMISSE. You can also find the Introspect Club at Introspect_Club for IG, Twitter, TikTok, you name it. Even we're on YouTube, so make sure you guys look out for that, as well as Patreon. Also, if you guys have any questions that you want to ask the podcast so we can answer on the show with a guest, make sure you shoot those questions to me in my DMs and I will get them answered, and maybe you'll be featured on this show. And also, if you are someone who has had an interesting life or a set of interesting experiences that you think other people can learn from, reach out to me and I might be able to get you on the show. With that said, Corwin, this was a phenomenal conversation. I appreciate you, brother.
Thanks so much. Great talking to you.
Thank you, man. Until next time.